Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering the Opposition. My name is Lexi Wilson. I'm a licensed master social worker.
And my name is Dr. Nafis Alam, and our topic today will be a unique one. It's the probability of alien life. Lexi, you and I have been talking about doing this topic for a very long time now. And really, the question is, are we alone? Which is scarier, that we are alone or that we aren't alone? And I think both are sort of equally scary, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think that this is it's just one of those questions that I think everyone ponders at some point in their life, and I think is just really interesting to think about and kind of dive more into. And it's just kind of fun. I feel like we needed a kind of a more lighthearted discussion today, and to just kind of go back and forth between, are aliens real? Are they not real? And just kind of ask fun questions and learn a little bit. And we're going to be talking about the Drake equation.
Yeah, we will be. But before we get to that, let's put a bit more pieces of preface to it, I suppose. When we started this podcast, actually before we started this podcast, you were so excited to talk about this topic, so was I.
Yes, I was. Yes. Yeah, I do remember that.
And I remember this being one of the primary reasons why we started the podcast. I mean, it took us long enough to get to it. And I'm sure we'll have plenty of other conversations about it in future podcasts. But, this is really one of the staple reasons why we have what we have, because I think we were sitting up on the balcony and just talking about, let's talk about these opposing viewpoints. What if they do exist? What if they don't exist? What does it mean for us? What if they're here right now? What if I'm one of them and you don't even know?
Which is really what it was. Yeah.
So it was a really interesting conversation. It's going to be lighthearted out, of course. None of us are Neil deGrasse Tyson.
And even he doesn't know all the answers, which I think is one of the most beautiful aspects about this topic in particular.
Yeah.
Is that no one knows either way.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of fun to just explore and ask questions and ask the crazy questions. And one thing I actually really admire about this topic is it kind of brings me back to just like being a kid, when you're just learning all these new things and, you're trying to figure out the world and everything's so fascinating to you. That's kind of how I view talking about this topic, is because there are really no answers, and it's all more about curiosity and just kind of trying to expand the way you think about things.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely about curiosity. I think, with the Drake equation in particular, it sort of makes it more dry, I suppose, because now you're talking about probabilities and inferential statistics. And really, I think there's a convincing argument to be made. And you said this just before we began recording. It's that it's very unlikely that we are alone, yet we cannot prove that we aren't, or that we are, I should say. So, or both, really. And it's interesting in that sense. And we can get into our own beliefs, as far as what we think is the case. But also, this is a ripe topic for empowering the opposition, because, unlike some other topics, where it's a bit of a weighted argument. One side carries a slightly, if not more slightly, greater weight than the other side of the argument. Here, the side that agrees with this particular topic has just as much ammo as the side that disagrees with it.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so unique and just kind of fun to debate a little and get into. Yeah.
So the Drake equation, okay, it's a simple 8-part equation.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Nafis take care of this one because I am no math wizard over here.
So the Drake equation, and we're solving for n. So n is what we're trying to get at, and n equals r, which is the mean rate of star formation, stars or suns, how rapidly stars form, times the fraction of stars that have planets, because not all stars have planets. Some stars do, some stars don't. Then the mean number of planets that could support life per star with planets. So now you've got a star, You got planets within that stars. You have to be in what's called the Goldilocks zone to be able to sustain life. Now, the next part of the equation, fraction of life-supporting planets that develop life, is that just because a life-supporting planet exists doesn't mean that it will. For example, Mars is in the Goldilocks zone, yet there's no life on Mars at this time. There are arguments as to whether or not there were in the past.
And I'm obviously no astrophysicist here, but I also wonder too, yes, we have a Goldilocks zone for our specific solar system, with our planets and our sun, but could those possibly differ, right? In other galaxies, could life be supported differently and have different zones of, where life is capable of? So
Well, we only know life
here,
Right,
within the
exactly.
context of our solar system.
Yeah. The last few parts of the equation are the fraction of planets where life develops, where life develops intelligence. So, I mean, we'd like to call ourselves intelligent, but really, in the grand context of things, we're not. But we are intelligent enough to communicate with one another. So you might have a star. You might have a planet in that solar system within the Goldilocks zone that actually sustains life, not just is able to, but actually lives up to the potential of sustaining life. Now we're assuming that that star is somehow also going to sustain life long enough for it to grow to be intelligent, or at least as intelligent as we are. And then after that, we have the second to last, the penultimate part of the equation is a fraction of intelligent civilizations that develop communication. So now you have a star, you have a planet within the Goldilocks zone of that star. You've got the life actually sustaining itself without just having the potential to, intelligent life forming, and then intelligent life communicating with us. And then the final part of the equation is, how long does that last, right? How long does that, once you've satisfied the other 7 parts of the equation, how long does a civilization, hypothetically, theoretically, remain intelligent enough to communicate? So Drake found that the eventual equation is 4 and 10. So essentially what that means is, what is it, 0.
It's 0.00127.
Right. So that is 127 civilizations that actually N, right? So the entirety of N, 127 civilizations per 100,000 years. And the universe is 13.8 billion years old. So if we were to do the math, and I'll just pull out my handy iPhone 12 Pro Max, which I just got recently. If we were to do that, if you wanna,
we're like doing a promo.
Humble brag, right? So if we have 13.8 billion years old, right, is the universe, divided by 100,000, which is what Drake said that per 127,000 per equals, and then times 127, we come up with, over the course of our universe, just in the Milky Way alone, 17,526,000 civilizations that have been intelligent enough to communicate and be, all that good stuff that
up until this point in time.
Yeah, because once
Yeah.
So
according to the Drake equation.
Which cannot be verified because we are you can't have a sort of a control group of one. We are both the control group and the experimental group, and you can't have that happen. But theoretically speaking, this essentially proves that we could not be alone. Essentially proves. Now, by no means does it prove that we are indeed, we have indeed seen alien life at some point. But mathematically and theoretically, this essentially proves that there must have been alien life at some point, if not right now, aside from us, intelligent life aside from us.
And so essentially what's pretty unique and really interesting about this equation is it doesn't prove alien life exists necessarily. It proves that it is a high possibility by allowing it to not be disproved, essentially.
Right. But if I were to tell you that there is a 99.99992% chance of something happening? Are you listening to the 99.999992? Or are you just thinking, yeah, it definitely happened? Right?
Yeah.
So that's where we come to, is that the probability that life outside of humanity, or outside of Earth, I should say, has never existed and will never exist is so low that you'd almost have to say that a 99.99999% chance of something happening is still just enough room where you're not going to say that it's going to happen for sure. And if you want to go that route, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Empowering the opposition, though, and this is where it gets really interesting, because we did a segment on religiosity and spirituality.
Yeah.
There's an argument to be made that humanity is not the creation of probability, but the creation of purpose, right? And if we were purposefully created, then it's very likely, in fact, that we are alone in a giant, 93 billion light year wide universe. So it could be possible that we are likely.
But then
alone.
also on that same note too, believing that there is a creator and the universe is so vast and wide, right? Yeah, maybe you'd want to create an Earth here and another planet here and fill that and, kind of keep tabs on all these different planets.
Maybe, yeah. But you're thinking, you're putting yourself in the creator's shoes. What if the creator has created us first, seen what happens, and is like, nah, I'm
Not
good.
Again.
Nah, we good.
I'll
we
just
good.
make the rest of these really pretty.
We made a mistake, or I made a mistake. I'm not gonna make another mistake on the other side of the universe. So there is a strong argument against the one that we just made with the Drake equation, that it's very possible that we are indeed alone in the universe from a creationist perspective.
Yeah.
However, if you are not of a creationist perspective, if you are not particularly religious, and if you are a particular type of mathematician, it becomes a little bit more difficult to be of the opinion that we have always been alone, that we are the only intelligent life forms that have ever existed in 13.8 billion years. So I think, it really depends on where you fall in that regard, and then what you believe. There's really no answer here.
Yeah. And now I kind of want to get to more of kind of the interesting questions, right? So we just reviewed the Drake equation, how mathematics has it, is trying to explain that, the possibility of alien life, just through sheer statistics and probability. What I'm curious about is kind of the more childlike questions, which are some of the best, I think, in my opinion. This is what I'm curious about. So some people think that, aliens have never visited Earth. And then there's another group that says, maybe they're already here, which is kind of interesting in itself to think about and entertaining that.
It's also possible that we aren't the first, we came from somewhere else, that we are all aliens in some ways. So one of the projects that I believe SETI was working on a long time ago was that if we were to suffer a disastrous event, a planetary disaster, what we would do is we would send bacteria to a potentially habitable planet.
Oh yeah,
and then have
colonizing that planet.
Exactly. Have the bacteria eventually grow, and after X number of thousands
create
of years,
oxygen and water and all the elements for life.
Well, no. Well, the planet itself would have to have the elements for life, but the bacteria would be sent there like amoeba and protozoa. So amoeba are the first single-celled living organisms, and protozoa are the first multi-celled living organisms. We all came from that. If you believe in evolution, we also want to respect the people that are creationists, right? So if you believe in evolution, you understand, or you would be of the belief that we came from protozoa and amoebas and single-celled organisms. So the idea around that is that since you and I can't travel light years and survive that trip, what can survive that kind of trip are like single-celled organisms, and the assumption is that in that particular environment, over the course of billions of years, those amoeba will turn into protozoa, will turn into Neanderthals.
So it's kind of
will
like
turn into...
planting a seed in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's an argument to be made that we were not born here. We were not Earth species. We were actually bacteria sent to Earth from a different planet.
I've never
as
even
it was
heard
done.
of this theory. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Another interesting question that I have when thinking about aliens, just out of pure intellectual curiosity, is why do we have this certain like vision of what alien looks like, right? We tend to think, like gray or green body, giant eyes, I'm like, why do we have this picture of what we think aliens are? Like, are they going to be more animal-like? Are they going to look more like us? Like, what would they be like, I mean, are they going to be more like robotic, like AI type? I don't know. It's just fascinating to ponder.
I think, it would be assuming that aliens are more intelligent than us, which doesn't take much, actually.
Yeah, that's true.
They would want us to believe that they're all green or gray, big heads and stuff like that, yet look completely different from what they're marketing themselves to look like, because that would protect them even more. It's quite possible that they're shapeshifters, or at least
that would be interesting, kind of like iguanas.
Yeah, so that or it's quite possible that they look very similar to us, and they've evolved to look very similar to us. And they're
living here right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible.
That would be crazy.
Wouldn't it be the ultimate theme park to be teleported to an environment where like, you could
emulate and just like, yeah, that would be a crazy experience. Yeah. Kind of a sick joke on the humans' part.
Of course. I mean, there's Michio Kaku, I think, posits the idea that maybe we are just dumb zoo animals to more intelligent beings, and they'll just come visit, look around, just like go back home and say, at least we're not that stupid. Yeah. But on the other side, though, is the idea that human beings, we are extremely violent people. And I don't want to get into politics, obviously. That's not what this is.
No, just historically, we're violent, tribalistic.
All we want to do is kill each other.
Yeah.
So it's feasible to believe that if aliens did exist, and if they were indeed intelligent enough to assess us, their determination might be that it is not worth making contact with us, because we would eventually take their weapons and use it against them, because we
definitely would.
Yeah.
I think what's the movie that would describe that perfectly? Avatar.
Braveheart.
We would absolutely go and take, just knowing the human race and knowing what we do. I mean, we do it right now. I mean, just thinking about our country right now, we do that with different types of minerals in Africa, specifically in the DRC. We do that with different resources around the world. We absolutely, as a human race within the world, would definitely do that to other.
Yeah.
So I think another question that I had to kind of pose to you, which I thought was interesting, was would the government or any government tell us if aliens came to Earth and it was it was verified or whatever, it was legit? But it's sort of a two-part question. One, would they tell us? And two, it would probably matter if they were less intelligent than us, we had more technology, therefore we would have control. Or two, if they had more technology and could control us and were a threat to us, would they tell either way or no?
I don't think they would tell us either way, because the role of government, the role of any authoritative body, is risk aversion. And this doesn't just go for this topic, it goes for social work macro practice too. Just throwing that out there. So as a macro practitioner, assessing liabilities and managing risk is your number one priority as a social work manager, not a social work practitioner. Very important to differentiate between the two. So from a risk aversion standpoint, what do you stand to gain by letting the people know of the truth? you know?
Probably fear, and people would freak out. Remember when people made that Facebook page, Storm Area 51?
Yes.
Do you
I
remember
Yep.
that?
Yeah.
That just totally popped in.
That was just a year ago, right?
Yeah, it feels like it was forever
I
ago.
know.
And some people actually did it. And I remember the U.S. military or some government organization had to like let out a statement of like, if you storm us, like we're basically gonna mess you up.
Yeah, you know, and yeah, I mean, people are curious, and in some ways, curiosity, some people are too curious, you know, and you can get in trouble for that. And I think that's why sometimes, you know, when you know something or when you figure something out, you know, sometimes you don't know it. Sometimes it's not verified, but sometimes you know, just sit up on the balcony and you sort of figure some things out. It's in your best interest to sometimes stay quiet about it, because once you figured it out, if other people know that you figured it out, you suddenly become a threat. You know, because if you can figure it out, then you can talk somebody else through figuring it out too. And once they figure it out, and there's a whole population of people that have figured it out, now you've got an even bigger threat.
Problem. Yeah.
So I think there are people that have these answers, but these are particularly...
Oh, you think there are answers to this
already?
Oh,
absolutely. I think there are answers to this question. Now, I don't know what the answer is, so I want to play both sides here, empowering the opposition, right? But I do think...
And even if he did, he wouldn't tell me.
No, I definitely wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't say... Because, like, what's the reason? Especially on a public podcast? No, I definitely wouldn't. Right? But, like, you know, there's a certain employing common sense, employing math, you know, it's
okay. Oh, here's another question. This is just totally for fun. Okay. So if aliens have been here, do you think they've been here a long time, or do you think they've just recently visited the planet?
Well, I'll put it to you like this. Just like we had this conversation, I would say about almost half a year ago now, up on the balcony, was that the pyramids. We still do not possess the technology to build the pyramids today. Yet they were built many, many years ago. We didn't build them. You and I didn't. Okay? You and I didn't, I would say.
I don't know about you, but I was back there building those pyramids.
But like the most advanced minds today do not have the ability to figure out how to build these structures with the tools that were available back then, I should say. We could easily, mathematically, theoretically build these now because of the cranes and machines that we have. But in order to use the tools that we had back then, same thing with sundial and Stonehenge and, you know, things like that. That kind of technology didn't exist back then. And in fact, that much of that technology and those abilities, and they don't exist today. So I'm answering your question indirectly, in more as a question, is that if we don't have that technology and that ability now, we definitely didn't have it back then. Yet these were built. Therefore, who built them? And then on the flip side,
and empowering the opposition, and maybe I'll say something different than you were going to say. The first thought to me was maybe lost cultural knowledge. That, you know, we see that with a lot of the Amazonian tribes, different types of like medicinal knowledge, and other knowledge from those different cultural groups have been around for a long time, but for one reason or another went extinct. So that would be opposing that. So
I mean, similar to what you're saying is that we tend to think of human intelligence as an upward line. But many theorists think of human intelligence as peaks and valleys, up and down, up and down, up and down. And one of the funnier examples that he used, I forget his name, was that think about 20 years ago, 40 years ago now, 40 years ago, if I asked you to go to the gas station, then to the grocery store, then, you know, up to, I don't know, the sporting goods store, and then come back home, you'd probably be able to figure that out based on where you are. Now, I need a navigation to go to my mailbox, you know?
Yeah.
So we have lost the ability for navigation today.
And also I think too, we've lost navigation. We've lost a lot of survival knowledge.
No, yeah.
You put like 99% of us
Yeah.
in the US right now, throw us in the wilderness, we die quick. Like there's no way, so a lot of that very innate survivalist knowledge is gone. And it's really interesting too for me to think about how a lot of these different indigenous populations, how for some reason as a society collectively we think a lot of the innovations that we're making seem to be better and more technological and great, and some of them absolutely have, and they are, whether that be in medicine or in technology, right? But then there's other things that we've lost, or don't really think about as much when thinking about medicines or even the flip side of like technology, right? Like you and I have first-handedly experienced the huge shift that technology has played in our lives. I mean, literally in front of us right now, we have a Yeti speaker, we have a iPad, we have a Mac, I have my phone, and I'm sure Nafis is brand new. Yeah, iPhone's over there. Like
while we've got the game going
while
on
we
TV,
have the game on, we have
on Apple TV,
yes,
on Wi-Fi. It's just
it's crazy. It's crazy, and it's almost, if we think about it, to a certain extent, these things have become crutches for us, and in some instances have disabled us in other areas of our lives, such as our social lives, our more innate human things that we've been used to, such as direction and survival. Like it's very interesting seeing how we've kind of opened up this black box when it comes to technology, and there's a lot of good, but there's also some not so good things.
And it's quite possible that back then they possessed an ability that over the course of time was no longer necessary, therefore evolution sort of weeded that out. I mean, look at like working out, even like the majority of people during survival times,
they didn't have to work out.
No, they were just they
were doing it,
right?
They were
exactly.
Always working
And if they weren't always working out, they were just dead.
Yeah.
And here we have like obesity and things like that, so it's like
food's readily available all the time, 24/7.
We don't need to hunt.
We don't need to hunt at all. Like no calories, to be able to, we don't burn any calories is what I should say to be able to go
like,
get
no
food.
calories. That'd be great.
No, we definitely have those, but we don't have to burn any to go to the store or go through a drive-through.
Yeah. I also think about the pace of technological advancement, right? So we've got
so fast.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I feel like there has to be some sort of more intelligent being, like just, sort of mentoring humanity.
Yeah. Okay, if there was I'm just going to say it, and I know I'm going to sound crazy, but I don't really care, because I swear, if there was any one person I can think of on this planet who's an alien, it'd probably be Elon Musk.
He kind of looks like one.
He does. He kind of looks like an alien. He looks like he's like trying to fit in, but just like not doing it super well. And he the way his brain works and the way he talks is super fascinating. I've listened to some podcasts he's been on, and just the way he describes different things, and he's a fascinating human being, or not, I don't know.
Yeah, and he's accomplished a lot,
very
it's
quickly.
SpaceX, and it's just
Neuralink. Have you heard about that?
No.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So I think it's super creepy, and I don't think we should do it at all. So Elon Musk is working on this technology right now called Neuralink, and essentially it's about implanting chips into your brain, and so that people can communicate without actually speaking. And he frames it under the view of this can help people who maybe are like deaf, for example, like that could be helpful for them, or people who have disabilities, but also how he is, like he just goes full throttle with everything, whether it be Tesla or SpaceX. And I just think it's a very dangerous thing to even consider doing. But
and then if people who can speak were to get the Neuralink, then the ability for speech will likely decrease, And 2023, Apple glasses are coming out.
Oh, what's that?
So it's like they look like regular glasses, but in front of you, you see like navigation with augmented reality. You can say, "Hey Siri, how far am I from the couch?" And then like it'll determine it based on what you're looking at.
Really?
Yeah, everything happens right in front. So if you get a message, it's right in front of your face, but it's like a one-way glass, so you can see the message, but the
other
person on
people can't.
Yeah, so they just see your eyes.
See, I feel like part of this just scares me. I mean, we know that suicide rates are rising so quickly. People, as a society in general, in the countries where these technologies are readily available, and obviously correlation does not equal causation. I need to say that. But also we do see that since technology has just spiked and skyrocketed during our lifetime, anxiety is increasing, so is depression. It's a scary thing, and I think it's a very slippery slope.
Well, technology and socialization have an inverse relationship. Mm-hmm. The more technologically advanced a particular civilization is, the less social that they'll be, because they'd much rather hang out on Facebook and Instagram than with each other. So
which also goes against our most basic, human needs. I remember writing a paper my freshman year of college about the neurological effects of what is it called? When they put you in a room in jail.
Oh, solitary
confinement. Yeah. I wrote a paper on solitary confinement, and basically it's probably up there with some of the most inhumane forms. Even though it doesn't sound inhumane, it really is. It's one of the most inhumane forms of torture that we still do all the time in the U.S. And essentially, our brains need and crave stimulus, especially from other people. And when we don't have it, we can start hallucinating, experiencing delusions, and it's really scary. And they've actually shown that in a lot of these inmates that who have been in solitary confinement for long periods of time, their amygdalas can actually shrink. So the area in the brain that's really, really important for a lot of our most like basic functioning and social functioning and stuff like that. But it was a fascinating and very sad, disturbing paper to read, because the brain, essentially what it does when it had no human stimuli, it created its own to just keep it going. And a part of me questions, is that kind of what we're doing, just more in a long term way with technology, right?
And maybe the guidance that we need is from a more of a veteran when it comes to like species. So if like extraterrestrials are communicating with us,
they're like, don't do it.
They might be saying, hey, listen, we tried the whole technological trend thing, and we realized that it just, it decreases socialization. It could be that most, if not all, living beings need socialization. Maybe that's the key. And maybe technological prohibition is the best way. I was like, prohibition, that's really strong. Limitation, I guess you could say, to increase socialization, because I could totally see more intelligent beings telling us about their mistakes as they themselves were developing, and then we can learn from that, if they were benevolent, of course. There's also the potential, right? We haven't talked about this yet. That, that an alien species may in fact be malevolent, that they might say, oh, you're aggressive. You
We're
ain't
more
seen nothing
aggressive.
yet.
Yeah.
Watch this, right? Hold my beer. Right?
Yeah.
So they could be more aggressive than us, and if we were to be found, then they might say, all right, time to go out there and time to kill them off and colonize whoever we can and things like that, or so there's a potential for that. And then there's an element of religiosity there too, is that perhaps there is a great protector keeping these civilizations far enough apart that they can
never interact.
Exactly. And also that has a lot to do with that last part of that equation, the L. How long does a civilization stay intelligent and communicative? And that's depressing, because it gives off the impression that it's a finite period of time.
Well, it definitely is. I mean, even when we think about, as soon as our sun blows up, we're done for.
Yeah.
Earth is done for.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how long that is, but I mean, if something doesn't happen before then, there is that finite amount of time, whether it be a comet or the sun blowing up or solar flare,
Well, I think in a few million years, we're going to be merging with the Andromeda galaxy. And this is a fact. It's not like a, hypothetical.
You're like, I feel like it'll happen.
Yeah. It's like, I have a feeling.
I just got a hunch.
At that point, there's no way we're going to survive because there's going to be collisions everywhere, and the heat and all that produced, and the friction and the radiation produced. We're not going to be able to survive. So humanity and Earth has some maximum limits right now.
Yeah.
So we know that we're not going to make it past 2 million more years.
Wow, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah. So I mean, that's one of the reasons why there are so many organizations, taking it upon themselves to figure out, like, the search for that Goldilocks zone planet and, habitable planets. Like, they've never gone harder at it. And the more I look at it, I think to myself, why are they putting in so many funds, so much effort into this, yet they're not telling the public about, they're making the public believe that they're doing it for
fun, shits and giggles.
And because of all the money that's being devoted here and all the resources, I have a feeling that someone knows that our time is much shorter than what we might think it is, and we're going to need to have an escape route sooner than we might think we do. And thus, the emphasis on finding an exoplanet.
Yeah. I just saw, and obviously this wouldn't matter if this was 2 million years with the collision of the other galaxy, but I just saw the other day on LinkedIn that an 18-year-old girl from, I can't remember exactly where she's from, but she's like the first girl her age to ever complete all these different NASA space camps, and she's like set to be one of the first women on Mars. And I'm like, wow, interesting. Like, we are seeing a lot of these leaps and bounds in space exploration, and it's a fascinating time to be alive. It is,
and it's definitely. I mean, we have more questions than answers. I mean, it's definitely interesting to think about. I'd imagine that most people think about this at least once every month or so, depending on how much time they have, I guess. But it's an interesting conversation. Are we alone? Are we not alone? If you were to have the answer,
would you want the answer?
Would you want the answer?
If someone, had a golden platter and said, "Here you go. Here's the answer."
Yeah.
Would you take it?
Yeah, because
would you, Nafis? Would you take it?
I don't think. Well, I would.
It's the truth.
Well,
it is the burden of knowing the full truth and not being ignorant.
I would be worried that the answer would be that we are alone. Because
that's what you would be worried about.
That would be because if we are indeed alone, what
would that mean for you?
It would mean that nothing means anything.
Or everything means everything because we are alone.
Well, okay. So the reason why in my opinion, if we are alone, that it would mean that nothing matters is because once we pass, there is no potential for any future civilization to pick up. And,
so there would be no future of the human race.
There would be no future of life if we're alone. My hope is that even if we don't make contact with extraterrestrial beings, that our artifacts will be found millions of years after we've all gone extinct, and then they'll create a story. They'll create, this is what the internet was. They figured out the internet. They did this, they did that. It's so cute how they did all of this, and let's see the mistakes that they made so we don't make it ourselves. If it turns out that we are alone and that we'll always be alone, for me, it would just be very, very depressing. I think it would be, like, if that was the answer, I wouldn't want it. But if the answer is, dude, obviously we're not alone. 17 million times over, we are not alone, according to this equation.
Would you want to meet an alien if you were given the opportunity?
Oh, that's a way too deep of a question. So, like, I mean, if they're malevolent, no. If they want to beat the crap out of me, no. I don't want to meet someone.
It's a toss-up.
I got enough humans who want to beat the shit out of me. I don't need,
Don't need an alien.
No. But if they're, and also like, are they scary looking? You might get have nightmares. You know what I mean?
That's true.
There's also the potential that because of spatial dimensions, that aliens are occupying the same space that we're occupying, only in different dimensions. So we
we haven't even talked about parallel universes.
Yeah. So in that sense, we know that there are 11 spatial dimensions, and we occupy 3 of them.
That's so interesting.
So we can essentially have another being, another species, let's say, occupying 3 different spatial dimensions
At the same
than we are, and essentially be in the same place, quote unquote, as we are. So, we might not have to look too far. We might just have, like,
It may be right here.
Yeah, exactly. It might be right here. We're just not able to see it. Imagine a 2-dimensional being trying to describe a 3-dimensional character.
Yeah.
That's essentially what we'd be trying to do with advanced dimensional beings.
And I think that's one thing that's so fascinating to me about space too, is that when we tend to think about aliens or really anything in space, we use the same rules that we understand by how the Earth works, right? Gravity, how it works on Earth. Gravity, how it works on Earth is not how it works really anywhere else in the universe. And just a lot of the rules of like socialization and just space and distance do not apply once you leave Earth. And so I think what's so unique and special is that the way we think about the universe and aliens can be entirely wrong. And if anything, we need to get a lot more creative about how we think about these kind of things, because it doesn't necessarily apply to the same rules of how we think about everything.
Yeah. And it's fair to say that even the most advanced minds are not advanced enough to think about what they should be thinking about, so
yeah. And with that too, it's like going to different universities, right? Like getting all these different types of educations. It seems to me that a lot of these types of educations were trained to think in certain ways and specific patterns, right? And I think what sometimes lacks there is we tend to lose our creativity along the way. Oftentimes it's young children, kids who are some of the most creative little beings ever. Like they think so outside of the box, right?
Yeah.
And we almost have to retrain ourselves to do that and think that way as adults.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'm Dr. Nafis Alam.
And I'm Lexi Wilson. I'm a licensed master's social worker. This has been Empowering the Opposition. See you next time.